Hi, thanks again for tuning into Sin's Workshop here on YouTube. So today we're going to be talking about The Crow Rider by Kalyn Josephson, published by Source Books Fire. You're going to have to excuse me today. My nose is will not stop running, and I can't take any more allergy medicine. It's just killing me today. But that's neither here nor there. So this is the second and final book in the Stormcrow duology, and I have to say, I was pretty impressed by it. However, I do have to give it only 3.5 stars because the character dynamics, they were a little, sorry, my tripod's not completely level. Sometimes I'm like Monk. Oh, that's so much better. And the character dynamics were a little off for me personally. I will say this about Source Books Fire. They do tend to publish a lot of books that I love, or like at least. I was very impressed with The Stormcrow, the first novel in the series. I thought it dealt really well with PTSD and depression in fantasy medium, because this girl's world has been completely invaded and completely destroyed. She's lost almost everyone close to her, and I think the way it dealt with those in the first novel were very well done. However, the second novel, it kind of loses it a little bit, mainly when it deals with Thea and her relationship with Callus. Sorry, he's just not a memorable character anymore, so I can't really remember his name. I remember everyone else, all the important players, but I can't remember his name, so I think it's Callus, so we're just going to go with Callus. And I'm looking at my notes here, and I thought I wrote it down. Oh, wait, no, it is Callus. It is Callus. Callius, with a Y in there. So I did remember. But he has a lot of bad history. And you know what? Let's rewind a second. Before I get into that, we were talking about, character dynamics. Between Thea and Callus, the previous novel ended with them running off together, with the rebellion, right? And I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. I hate that feeling. And I think it was pretty clear from the setup in the novel that Josephson was trying to avoid a love triangle, and she did. She successfully avoided a love triangle. However, I think she backed herself into a bit of a corner, because I think it was evident from the previous novel, The Stormcrow, that Thea was going to end up with Prince Arison. I thought that was pretty evident. They had really good foundation of friendship building in this novel, which I really liked, and building in the previous novel between Thea and Arison. I thought that was really well constructed, and I liked the idea that she was avoiding a love triangle, because you don't really see it, and I appreciate that. However, I think it was pretty evident that they were going to end up together. So I think she backed herself into a little bit of a corner, Josephson. I think she backed herself into a bit of a corner when she put Callius and Thea together, because now she has to sort of break them up, and it's too clean. It's unrealistically clean, because there's so much angst, especially with Callium. Like I was saying before, he has a lot of baggage, and it's really affecting his relationship with Thea, except we don't get to see it as a reader. It's alluded to, but I think it would have been better for the reader to see it, to see just how strong PTSD is, because that's what he's suffering from. He was forced to fight for his entire life. He's pretty much a fighter. He escaped that life, and now he's sort of being drawn into this rebellion and into fighting again. He doesn't want to fight. He wants to be an inventor. So it's bringing up a lot of bad memories for him. And Thea, she's not really the same person she was in the first novel. The thing is, it's like a lot of time has passed between the first, like a couple weeks. So not that much time, but I think those couple of weeks could have been essential in building up these character dynamics between those two. Because it had such a good character dynamic built up in the previous novel, but now it's just kind of floundering. Josephson, like I said, backed herself into a corner. She has to break these two up, especially if she wants to go with her original plan of bringing Thea and Prince Arison together. So I think it's really important that I highlight this, because their breakup is way too clean. And I think maybe the story being constricted was probably another problem. I don't think this novel needed to be a trilogy. I mean, it worked out perfectly fine as a duology, I think. But I think there's way more that could have been explored in this novel that would have allowed some of these character dynamics to be fleshed out more, in a believable way, because there's another princess, That's another thing. Thea makes friends way too easily in this novel, and I wasn't particularly a fan of that, because people she's making friends with, and they start out with such animosity towards her because of her mother. On the one hand, you kind of understand her mother's idea. If I don't enter this battle, I'm not going to be put on their target. I'm not putting a bullseye on my back, But I think that goes back to a lot of things I've said in the previous, being silent makes you just as culpable. And her inaction, it didn't stop her from having a bullseye on her back, because the queen, Queen Rayla, she hated Thea's mother more than anything in the world. So whether or not she took action, she was going to be invaded on some level. And I think I understand her point of view, but I think it was naive of the queen to expect she wasn't going to have a bullseye on her back. And I also understand these princesses, their kingdoms have been completely decimated by this invading country. They're living in hiding. They're part of a rebellion. And all of this is because they didn't have the unity that Thea is building in this novel. And so they hate Thea for her mother's sins, which is completely understandable, But I think the way Thea makes friends with them is way too easy. Like, I just didn't find it believable. It's like, oh, in one scene you completely hate her, and now in this new scene you're best buds. I just didn't find that believable at all. So I think, in the first novel, those character dynamics were done exceptionally well, but now in this sequel, I felt like Josephson was kind of just rushing to get the story done and to get the story out there and conclude it, which is why I'm saying, maybe there's so much more that could have been just developed and fleshed out in this novel, so that we could have just had a trilogy, and Josephson wouldn't have lost some of those character dynamics. Now, I hate my allergies so much. Now, that being said, I do still, at the end of the day, think it was a good story. I would have given it 4 stars if it hadn't been for those character dynamics. The story is really well developed, I think. It does give the series, a really well-rounded conclusion. It does go back to some of the history and mythology of this, this land, of the Storm Crows. It gives them a lot of history, lots of mythology, and a lot of magic. Another thing I think could have been done better, though, is the Cellas. We don't really get to know much about this new antagonist that has been brought in. We don't really get to see them a lot either until like the very end. So I think, again, more could have been done on that area. Once again, I think this series probably could have functioned better as a trilogy rather than just a duology, because there's lots of things that the author just kind of touches upon but doesn't really expand to its fullest. And she can, you know, she is capable of doing that. She showed that in her first novel of the series, but I think, you know, we kind of lose it a little bit in this novel. Sorry, my nose is killing me, so I need something to drink. I think at the end of the day, you know, while it is a really decent novel, you know, it does have a very fluid pacing. You know, it's not choppy. It flows very steadily. Some of those action-packed scenes are so well detailed that you're just kind of like sucked into it. You're sucked into the scenery. You're sucked into the battles, and that, you know, that climactic ending. Oh, so good. You know, between Thea and Queen Rizal, it was so good, so impactful. I thought it was absolutely amazing how it was done. So that's my opinion on this. At the end of the day, I think maybe, I don't know if this is if she only had a 2-book deal with the publisher, I think it definitely could have functioned better as a trilogy rather than just a duology. But for what it was as a duology, it is a pretty solid duology. Has a great opening novel and a great ending, ultimately. I mean, that ending in this novel is pretty impactful. It's action-packed. It has a lot of history, a lot of mythology, a lot of magic in it to keep the reader entertained. Thea does have a great voice and a great narrative, as well as a great personality to draw the reader in. You can definitely connect with her as a reader. I just think some of those character dynamics were a bit unbelievable, and ultimately I think that kind of loses the reader just a little bit. But, you know, still 3.5 stars, almost 4, and you know what, I definitely do recommend this novel. So once again, it's The Crow Rider by Kalyn Josephson, published by Source Books Fire. Please remember to support your local bookseller and not get the book off from Amazon. They got enough business. It's the bookstores that need the business. And if money's too tight, please support your local library and check out the book from them. Okay, so have a great rest of your day, you guys. And as always, happy reading.